presence, Lord.
Last week right now, I was on an airplane getting ready to land in Honolulu, and I had been out in New Mexico studying with three incredible spiritual mentors for the week. And I was reintroduced to an ancient practice that I had forgotten about long ago. The word in Hebrew, as well as in Greek, for spirit is the same word for breath. Get it? So the Spirit of God is the same word that we use for breath. And the word that is in Hebrew, the word for God, is Yahweh. Everybody say Yahweh. So Yahweh is this way of breathing. And the idea is that this word of Yahweh is literally a breath. It's a breath that we breathe in and exhale in the same word. Yahweh. Yahweh. In the ancient time, it was believed that as soon as you sucked oxygen in as a baby for the very first time, you were breathing in Yahweh. And ever since then, we've been breathing together Yahweh. And so for a few moments, what I want to invite you to center ourselves as we get ready to explore this idea of love is by sitting straight and breathing. And simply breathing in Yahweh. It is your presence, O God, that we breathe. From our very first breath of life until the very last. Our breathing is the reminder that your Spirit is with us. Embolden us this day to live into this truth. That you are never the God of faraway lands. You're never the God that just dwells in the cosmos. But you're the God that we breathe in each breath of our life. And so today, would you be with us in our breathing, in our hearing, in our processing, that we may be filled with your presence and be assured of your grace. For you are the one who we celebrate and we worship. It is in your name that we pray. Amen. Today, you have noticed that worship has had more people involved, and today is what in our tradition is called Laity Sunday. Laity Sunday is this first September of every year that we gather together to unleash the laity into involvement in the church. Why? As Protestants, and good Protestants at that, we are founded upon this belief of the priesthood of all believers. That we are all equally called and gifted to bless each other. And that some of us take this on as vocation, but the vast majority of us don't. You use your gifts and your skills to be a blessing to each other. And so today we celebrate in that vein Laity Sunday. And so today's sermon is a little different. Today, for the last few years, on this Sunday, I do a conversational sermon with someone. So the first year I found out it had to be a female. Last year it had to be a dude. And this year we're back to dudettes. Okay, everybody say dudettes. It's new terminology that we're going to introduce you to. And so today is a delight. Alexa Zen is going to partner with me in our sermon together. And Alexa is married, it goes to a 9 o'clock service, and sits in the front row every week.
Oh my.
Has everybody say aloha to Alexa?
Aloha.
And Alexa sits not only in the front with her husband and mom, but also her little girl who's one, Zoe, who is just the cutest thing and never saw you this morning. She kept looking the wrong way. She didn't see you, which might have been good. She might have screamed if she saw you. Like, Mama! But today what we are going to do is unpack this idea of the passage that we just read. But before we do, I want to introduce you to what we're doing for the next 7 weeks. We're started this sermon series called Choosing Abundance. And we live in a time and place and culture in which we hear the word abundance, and most often we think about stuff. what we acquire, the things of our lives, those material possessions, and we look at that and say, that's a sign of abundance. And certainly that's a form of abundance. But I don't think that is the scriptural idea of abundance. Instead, abundance has to do with soul. How is it that across our globe, sometimes the most joyous people in the world are the people that have nothing? And the people that have the most often are searching for something of meaning. You see, we are a people that are invited into this way that we call Christian to learn about abundance of soul. And so for the next 7 weeks, we're going to look at 7 markers of abundance. And we start this week with the word love. Why? The theology that we teach here, the theology that we find ourselves in, is a theology founded and rooted in love. If you take all of the Bible and put it together into a 2-word sentence, you get extra credit in heaven if you get this right, because a couple weeks ago I said it, and we're going to see who was asleep and who was awake. How do you summarize the whole entire gospel? 2 words. Okay, so like 5 of you get credit in heaven, right? And so if you summarize all of our gospel, all the story of these scriptures, what does it boil down to? It's the story of love winning. And that love always wins. And so the theology, the thinking about and making our understanding of God is rooted and founded in this theology, that it is based in love. It is not based in anger or division or we're better than they are. Instead, it's based in this love that is never ending. And so today we gather underneath of our motto as a church. What is the motto of Central Union Church?
Love never faileth.
Love never faileth. The ancient English version, and the modern day we call it love never fails. And if you've ever been in the sanctuary, you know that as soon as you walk in, you see it in the front. And so love never faileth. Alexa is one who has been at this church for a few moons more than me. How old were you when you first came to Central Union?
I think I was about 3 years old. So I came to Central Union as a preschooler. And then my mom and I started attending Sunday services regularly, and she made it our home, and I made it our home as well. I grew up and was raised in the church.
Oh, cool. And so do you have any early memories of that slogan?
Well, I have to admit that, no, I don't, because for me, it was that thing that was always there up on the wall behind me when I was singing in the keiki choir or sitting down, listening to the children's story before going off to Sunday school. It was just there.
And so for a moment, I want to highlight that. She said this to me a few weeks ago, and I just sat there going, love never faileth. It's always there. Do you get that? That in a world that we try to attain and reach and earn, it's something that's already here. And so certainly it's up on the wall, right?
Yes.
And what impact does it have of being up on the wall for you? Because you sit every week in the front, right? And get to stare at it up close and personal. What impact does it have in your personal life? This idea of love never faileth and it always being around us.
Well, I think it's twofold for me. One, it's this constant reminder. I mean, you can't miss it. It's so big. But it's nice to see that we as a church, as a congregation, we decided that those words are what embodied our church, that it's our motto, it's what guides us. So it's a constant reminder that love never fails us. And then secondly, when I leave church, it's not that those words just stay on the wall, it's that I take them with me, and I think we all take them with us. Whether we go to work or school, it's not just that thing that's always there in the sanctuary, it's that thing that's always there now, here.
Yeah. And so the great theologian Tina Turner once said, what's love got to do with it, right? I don't know what the rest of the song says. I just know that part. What's love got to... So come on, you guys know it. Got to... I feel like I'm all alone here. Okay, we're going to pause, and that way we can learn to sing together, okay? On the count of 3, we're going to sing Tina Turner and invoke the Tina Turner power into our worship. Ready? 1, 2, 3. What's love got to do? got to do with it? Love got to. Adim. Yes. Heart can be broken. So we have this deep belief that love is the root. And you all are amazing Tina Turner singers. Wow, who knew? But really the root of our faith is that love has everything to do with it. And that it's not something that is just a slogan or something on the wall, but it's something that we carry inside of us. It's something that we leave from this place and take wherever we go. And so when you hear this 1 Corinthians 13 passage, what pops into your mind of context in which you normally have heard that passage?
I think I first heard it at a wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how often have you heard it not at weddings?
Never. Well, church.
Right now, yeah. And so you're married
Yes.
3 years, and I'm assuming that because you're a good Christian gal and grew up in the church with love never failed, you used this at your wedding, right?
So no, I didn't. And actually, not only that, but when we were meeting with George Scott, who officiated over our wedding, I specifically requested that we not use the scripture in our wedding. Because my reasoning at the time was that, in all honesty, it sounded very boring to me. You know, love is patient, love is kind, love is blah, love is blah. That's what I'm thinking in my head. And at the time I was thinking, no, I want my love with my husband to be exciting. I want it to be passionate and to take my breath away. You know, not this patient, kind, boring stuff. It's since changed, though, I have to admit, it's since changed.
Are you saying it's now boring and that kind of stuff?
Well, it's no longer just the exciting stuff. It's boring in a good way.
Yeah.
In that being patient and being kind toward one another and supporting each other is actually unimaginably much better than I ever thought it could be.
Yeah. And so in our language of English, we have a word that we use for love, and it is love. And so when you tell me that you love Mike, and you love Poke, and you love Zoe, your daughter, I can differentiate because I'm culturally astute enough to know that there's different kinds of loves that you speak of. Well, how do you understand love and all its complexities when you think of like Mike, your husband, Poke, God's gift to humanity of food, and your daughter, a princess, an angel of God's own making?
Well, I do love a good poke bowl. It's different, and yet it's the same at the same time. Earlier this week, I was thinking of examples from my life that might illustrate how I differentiate the love, and yet how it also comes from the same place. And I was thinking, well, what do I deal with every day? So my daughter, who's 1 year old, as you can imagine, I have to change a lot of diapers. So I'm just curious, is there anyone in this room who loves changing poopy diapers? No, right? Because I certainly do not love changing poopy diapers. It's gross, it smells. And yet, I've become the type of person where, and I'm sure many people can relate to this, the thought of my daughter sitting in a poopy diaper is just horrific to me, because one time I let it go too long, I didn't mean to, I find her, all of a sudden she has this diaper rash that lasts a week. It's a constant reminder to me that I failed her as a mother that one time.
You are forgiven.
Thank you. So it's almost become obsessive to me. I hate changing poopy diapers, and yet I'm constantly looking for them eagerly. You know, I get a whiff of, I don't know if it's gas or poop, so I go up to her butt, I'm in public, I lift her up, I smell her. I'm still not sure, so I check on the backside, but sometimes it's tricky to see, right? So then I turn her upside down, and I'm just looking on the inside crease. And that's, but I do that, and I'm sure there's many examples that you all have in your lives. I mean, even if you don't have kids, I'm sure you have dogs and you're picking up the poop after them because we love them. So that's where my daughter is right now in her life. She's a baby, so that's an example of just me selflessly cleaning her, loving her, not really expecting much in return. Of course, that's not the same as the love that I have for my husband. I'm not changing his poopy diapers yet. We'll be changing each other's diapers in about 40 years, I'm sure. But with him, there is this passionate aspect to it. There's this romantic side that we share. But there's much more than that, too. In the 3 short years of marriage that we've had some very high highs and some also very low lows. And it wasn't any romantic love that got us through it. It was this patient, kind, enduring, supportive love that has really got us through things. And it's really the kind of love that I look forward to when I lay down and go to bed beside him at night. So even though I can view my love for my husband and my daughter as 2 separate things, the motivating factor for me is that it comes from the same place.
Yeah. And so this reading that we read, that most often people think of weddings, believe it or not, it wasn't written for weddings. Shocking, right? It's written to a church in a city called Corinth. And Corinth was a community of faith that was experiencing division. And they were finding different ways in which they were saying, we're better than another group. And as happens with any time you gather 2 or more people together, there will be conflict, right? Including marriage. And yet, in the midst of this, they're having issues with each other about who is the best of the best in the community. In other words, what they're saying is that we all are given these gifts, the priesthood of all believers, and we all have these gifts, but my gift's better than your gift. Why? Because it's my gift. And so they're having this debate about who's better than each other and missing the whole point altogether. And so Paul's writing before the 13th chapter about these are great gifts to have, and that even this gift of the Lord's Supper is for everyone, and everyone has equal access to it. So quit hoarding it and not giving everyone equal access and share. And then in 1 Corinthians 13, he's saying to them, but let me make it really clear to you of what we're supposed to be like. That if you have the best prophecies or words to talk about the future and you don't have love, it doesn't matter. You may have faith that can move mountains without love, it doesn't matter. You may have the gift of faith and of grace in such a way that you think that you're better than everyone else, but if it's not based in love, it's worthless. Because love is different than that. And so when we read 1 Corinthians 13, we read it, and often, myself included, because I do weddings a lot, and about 90% of them want 1 Corinthians 13 in it. And so for me, it's hard to remember that it's not just based about a romantic love, but instead is something even greater. So in the ancient world, in Greece, or Greek language, we only have one word for love. They had 4. 4 different words to describe love. And so philia is one of the words that they used, and we in America have a city called Philadelphia. Anyone know what Philadelphia stands for? Yeah, the city of brotherly love. So philia love is this friendship kind of love. A love that will be there for your friends when they're hurting as well as when they're celebrating. It's this great idea of love, of how it encapsulates the community that we surround ourselves with. Our brotherhood and sisterhood, if you will. But then there's another kind of love, and this is the eros kind of love, the love that you have with your spouse or partner. It's this romantic or passionate kind of love, and it's a good love, and it's a right love, and it is not the only way of love, though, right? So certainly I grew up in America, and so I watched Hollywood shows and movies, and I thought for sure, like, if you don't feel butterflies for the rest of your life, it's not really love, right? Because how could anyone ever spend life with each other? Because it's so boring, right? To be patient and kind and gracious and all this stuff. And so we have this notion of love being this butterfly flame explosion experience. And the reality of real love is that there are moments of that, but it's not always and forever. And then the third kind of love is this kind of love called storge. And storge is this idea of a love that you have for your literally brother, sister, auntie, uncle, grandparents, parents. It's a familiar kind of love. A love that wraps your family as one, and no matter how dysfunctional your family is, you keep going back to it. Right? I'm sure none of you have dysfunctional families in here, right? And so this is the love that is this bond that brings us back together every Thanksgiving to do it all over again. And yet at the end of the day, some of you really don't understand this. At the end of the day, at the end of our lives, often the people that we want around us is our family. It's this love that is deeply rooted in us, and it's good. But then this last kind of love, actually the First Corinthians love, is a word called agape. Everybody say agape? You now know Greek. Good job. Agape is this love that is unmeasured, is endless. It's one that is unconditional, non-judging. It's a love that's so pure that it's defined by God's love for all the world, cosmos, not just people, but all of it. It's a love that never ends. It's an unfailing love. It's a love that is expressed over and over again, no matter how many times we mess up, and never keeps a track record of what had happened in the past. And that's the kind of love that Paul's saying, hey, it's important that you all are a community of faith and you all have the brotherly kind of love. That's important. It's what makes us a community. It's important that you all have a passionate relationship with someone else too, because that's what makes families in a sense of wholeness. It's also important that you have a relationship with those that have raised you and that you grew up with too. But most importantly, don't forget about the love that never ends, that we're supposed to exhibit in our own lives in such a way that inspires others. And so this week, something you had said was that these 4 different kinds of loves have something all in common. What's all in common?
That thing that's always there.
The thing that's always there. This love that has no end, and that we're invited into. And it doesn't always make it easy, but it's something that we live into. And so we're in this sermon series about choosing abundance. How would you suggest for us that we choose the abundance of love?
Well, I think it's really, in a nutshell, I could say, go out and live aloha. And that's it, right? But I think we all recognize that it's easier said than done. I know that now as an adult, as an older adult, I should say, people who have come to know me at this age in my life tell me, wow, you're a nice person, level-headed, whatever. But I know that I didn't come here, I didn't arrive at this place without making mistakes, without saying things I regretted to loved ones and friends, without opening my mouth when I shouldn't have, speaking before thinking. And if I've learned anything, it's that, especially with relationships, it doesn't matter if I think I'm right and you're wrong and I'm trying to correct you or something. It doesn't matter if I'm getting impatient or frustrated because, my mom who's getting older now is taking too long to do something. That's not really what it's about, right? Who am I to be judging someone? Who am I to be telling that person what to do? My role in this life, and who I truly want to be in this life, is to be there for you, to be patient with you when you're having a challenging day, to be kind to you when someone else has been mean to you, to be supportive, to not keep a record of who's right or who's wrong. I'm just here to be with you. And I try to do that, although I will admit that I don't always do that when someone's cutting me off on the road and they're not using their blinker, and things like that pop up every single day, and it's nice to pause and think, okay, here's an opportunity.
Yeah.
You could let that road rage fly, or you can just pause and live aloha.
Yeah. I'm sure none of you experienced traffic this week in Honolulu. It was so easy to get around town all week, and there was no challenges to us to share our aloha with others on the road, right? But in reality, it is a matter of choice. That everything that we do is a matter of choice. And we aren't a people that are perfected in love. We don't do it perfectly all the time. And that's where grace and forgiveness is always coupled with love. Because in our ability to love, there are times where we miss the mark. But there's an opportunity to do it all over again. It's not about being perfect all the time, but instead functioning out of a different place in our lives where we're choosing to love you even though you may be difficult. I'm choosing to love you even though you may be completely different than me. I'm choosing to love you because I've been called by God to exhibit this love around us. And so I think about 1 John. John's the writer of one of the epistles. And as he's writing, he's talking about how do we understand love. He says, here's the truth of the matter. You all are first loved. It's already here. And then you then live out of that love to others. Or another way he says, you and I will be known not by the words that we shout at people, but by the way in which we love. It's a tangible reality. Love is a verb. It's what we do as a people. In a world in which has often seen Christianity as divisive, as being judgmental, as being a hypocritical type of people, I wonder how many times have we missed the call that's the basis of all calls to love? Because when we get into the argument of, are you right or am I right, we've missed the point altogether. I had a marriage counselor, premarital counselor that Kate and I went to. And I remember Kate and I had a disagreement because she wanted pink flowers and I wanted purple. Just kidding, I don't know what the argument was. But we were disagreeing with each other. And he stopped us in the middle of the disagreement and said, one question for you. When you argue, who wins? Of course, I was like, me? Duh. And of course, she was like, I'm older than you. Me? And he looked at us and said, if you win Kate, or if you win David, you won, but we lost. But if we win as a couple, our marriage is stronger and love is realized. We live in a world that believes in winning and losing, black and white, right and wrong. And most often we're able to throw the grenade over to the other side and seldom be able to say, how am I in this situation? And I wonder if we started living out of this ethos of love that is always there and around us, and allow that to be that which draws us into relationship with others, how would it change our relationships with our spouses, and with our friends and our kids? How would it change our relationships with those neighbors that annoy us at home? Or maybe even those people that we would call enemies? How would it change us in the very essence of how we experience this life if we lived out of an ethos of love? I might dare say that was the very essence of Jesus' message. Love wins. The only people that he really pointed fingers out was the religious people. Have you ever seen that in the Gospels? It's a scary thing that he went after the religious people to help them understand how to love. Perhaps what we can do, especially because of your words of wisdom today, we can live into learning how to be those that live love, that live aloha, that express ourselves in a way that's always filled with grace and welcome. It doesn't always mean that we're going to like the person across from us, but we're called to love them as ourselves. And so today, may we do that together as the body of Christ, finding out that God's love is realized among us as not just the statement on the wall of the sanctuary, but God's love truly will never, ever fail us. And so would you thank Alexa for her surviving the gauntlet? Thank you. And thank you for taking the morning to be away from your daughter. She's done all 3 services with me and got here at 6:15 this morning. And so she is a superstar in my book. And so I'm so thankful for you.
You're welcome.
And now you can go sit.
I can?
Yeah, if you want to take a nap, that's fine.